Hey there, and welcome to Wednesday's Wisdom Session. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we've been finishing up a really busy week over the last master class, and I gotta say, I'm proud of you guys for all attending. For those of you who have had the opportunity to actually start stepping into making this the year that you take back control of your health, take back control and say, you know what? You're gonna walk away from diabetes. It's super cool. Happy to be on this journey with you here, and I know my team is as well. Now, what I want to do is I want to let you know that for those of you who didn't get an opportunity to attend our last masterclass, we have had the opportunity to be able to schedule a new masterclass for you, and I'm really excited about it. I've been working really hard to make sure that we get you all of the latest cutting information that we share with you when we come here live every single Wednesday. So that's actually going to be happening in a couple weeks. We're going to be going live on Monday, March 24th. So make sure that you mark your calendars. You're going to find all the details here in our private Facebook community. You can always go ahead and message our masterclass concierge, Bailey Falk. If you have any questions, she'll direct you where you need to be. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring some information that actually helps demonstrate for you what we've been talking about on these Wednesday wellness sessions, and we've been talking about them throughout the masterclass. You know, most of the time, modern medicine, you know, they don't even know what to do with diabetes, and that's because they've never had the opportunity to actually be able to look at you and actually test you the right way. Remember from our class together, there's 5 different types of diabetes, and most people are, listen, they're not even aware what type of diabetes they have in the first place and what kind of condition they're going through, because really no one ever looks. They're not doing the right kind of testing. So get this, the article that I'm going to be sharing you this week, it hit my inbox, and it just hit my inbox about 2 days ago, and it talks about patients developing multiple types of diabetes. You know, while the standard care that's out there, you know, it's not looking for these things, and you can't even make this up, folks. Like, medicine is finally getting around to things that we've been talking now for decades. You know, medicine's finally getting around and looking at stuff that we've actually been teaching around forever, and I hate to say it, yeah, I've been around for a long time. But this article right here, this article is called Double Diabetes, and it's the silent threat of hiding what we call type 1 patients. So the article lays out how type 1 patients can develop insulin resistance, and that's the fundamental issues, obviously, that we know with type 2 diabetics. But the patient gets put on insulin, and then they begin to develop insulin resistance. Essentially, what's happening is they're flipping their type 1 diabetes into type 2 diabetes. Remember, we call this, as I've shared with you here, we call this type 1.5. That has both inflammatory issues, but there's this component that I want to share with you here tonight, and you can see it in the article, about insulin resistance issues. And again, we've been talking about this for almost a decade now. The same thing happens, but in the reverse, when we talk about insulin resistant diabetic patients, and then they develop type 1. Remember, this is what we call, like I just mentioned right now, type 1.5 diabetes. This is something that your doctor might call LADA. Again, I'll say that again one more time, LADA. That's latent autoimmune diabetes of adulthood. That's if you ever even catch that, if they're even trying to look for these things. Most of the time they aren't looking. They just, what do they tell you? They tell you the same thing that you hear every time. You show up to the doctor's office and they just tell you to diet, lose weight, and oh, by the way, do some more exercise, and don't forget to get your prescriptions filled. Like they think you haven't even tried that stuff. Anyway, the article that I'm sharing with you here, it's going to show you 2 sides of the spectrum. On one side, you have type 1 diabetes, and that's patients that don't make insulin, right? So they're all the way over here. And when we talk about the other side, you have type 2 diabetes patients, and they're on this side, and they make way too much insulin, right? So what these researchers have finally found is that when they're starting to put words to this is that type 1 patient that becomes insulin resistant, and then you have the type 2 diabetes patient that actually becomes autoimmune disease-like. So I'm going to say this again. You have a type 1 diabetic patient on this side, you have a type 2 diabetic patient, and what we're now finding, and we've been talking again like about this for a long period of time, you have these 2 types of diabetes patients becoming one diabetes patient, and this is the type 1.5. This is what being in a pickle really looks like, because when your doctor thinks your case is just, well, it's just actually like any other type of diabetic, then they're going to miss things. If this is you, if you're looking at your things like unrelenting weight gain, joint pain, just to name a few things, but when we talk about fatigue, it's like fatigue that just doesn't want to go away, compounded by bouts of things like insomnia. This is you if you show up at your doctor's office and they just think you're a medical mystery. They don't have the testing to actually be able to identify the root causes behind your issues. And one of the biggest reasons that we've talked about, and you probably know now, is the insurance won't even let them look for it. If your condition has been getting worse over time, and you're going to see your medication list, and it's just stacking up, right? In that little cabinet that you have in your bathroom called the prescription cabinet, right? You're just going to get put on the diabetes cocktail, right? What's the diabetes cocktail? Diabetes medications like metformin. It's going to be things like blood pressure medications, cholesterol drugs. Like if your condition has been getting worse over time, this is something you got to be looking at. Maybe you're not the type 1, maybe you're not the type 2, maybe you're actually this type 1.5, and your med list just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Your second, your third, your fourth diabetes medications. I just met a patient the other day, and they were on 5 different types of diabetes medications. 3 were all injectables. He actually told me, he's like, hey doc, do you think maybe the 6th one is going to finally fix this problem? Like, he was kind of half joking, but he kind of wasn't. It's this constant merry-go-round that goes around. It's one prescription after another prescription after another prescriptions. And I want you to hear this. I think there's definitely a time and place when we have these prescriptions and they're necessary. But in most cases, they're just overused. So when we talk about here, your med list, it keeps getting maneuvered around until finally you get to the end stage, and the end stage is insulin. If your condition, like we're talking about here, is maybe actually moving into the middle, and now you're this type 1.5 diabetic, the only way to get out of this is through comprehensive testing. Like we talk about in the master class, it's one of the pillars. It's one of the pillars of my type 2 diabetes transformation blueprint, and we're going to talk more about that, and we're going to really do a deep dive on that upcoming here in just a couple of weeks. But if your doctor doesn't even know what the exact type of diabetic you are, how will you ever expect to get better? The standard of care doesn't want to find what the problem is, especially when they just think, well, all roads when it comes to diabetes is going to lead you to insulin anyway. You get stuck. And you get stuck because there's no end to it, and they just keep telling you to work harder, work harder. How about working smarter? Even when we talk about all these crazy diets and these crazy exercise programs that are out there, and people just starving themselves and just watching calories and counting calories, and the best that you can do is just get, I don't know, like marginal results. Like you really know better. Maybe you lose a few pounds and then the weight just comes back, or you're just always tired, and no matter what you do, it just doesn't seem like it's getting better. Then we have to look at it differently. If you've already tried all that stuff, you've looked and you've looked and you've looked and you tried and you tried and tried. Well, now research is actually putting words to these kind of experiences that you might be going through. And I know it's crazy times that we're living in, but when your condition doesn't improve, right, you got to look at that. Maybe you're not the typical diabetic. When your treatment plan hasn't moved you any better, then you got to be looking for a different kind of experience. You're stuck with the same old dosaging strategies, the same old dosaging prescriptions that are out there. And listen, they're always coming out with new prescriptions. You guys know that. Like every time you turn on the clicker, there's always a new drug commercial that's out there, right? But you get stuck. You get stuck in this cycle. And you have piles and piles and piles of these medications. And we got to realize that when you take a step back, you have to just say, okay, if I'm not getting better, maybe I'm not the typical diabetic. Maybe there are other underlying issues here. And we know for sure there's a large number of you that are listening to me right now, because we've got a big group here, who you have this type of diabetes. You're not a type 1, you're not a type 2, you're somewhere in between here, and you're this type 1.5. You're morphing into something that your doctor even doesn't know how to handle. You have part of a component that's a type 2 issue, which is an inflammatory. That's like a wildfire. Listen, I'm happy to help here and give you this information. But really what you need is to look at it and say, well, what kind of specific testing leads me to find out why these problems are happening? It leads me to a better result. It leads me to actually being able to walk away from type 2 diabetes. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to get different results. You know, if you've been following me for any length of time, you know reversing diabetes, it's not hard. It's just got to be specific. It's got to be specific to you. That's really the path to a diabetes-free life, right? That's what this is all about, is figuring out why are these problems there in the first place? What are the underlying root causes that are causing you to keep stuck? Anyway, I'm gonna post a link here so you can read this article. I think it's definitely worth your time, and realize it happens both ways, right? You can have type 1, you can have type 2, and the medical literature is finally coming to light of this, and they're seeing that these are the issues. Now, you'll also read in the article that they've got no solution for it, but stay plugged into this community, stay plugged into the upcoming masterclass, and realize that you can walk away from type 2 diabetes, right? So here's the question you always have to ask yourself. Are you really a type 1 or are you type 2? Well, which of the diabetes, the possible different types of diabetes, are you really? So have you ever been checked? Think about that. I think it's time to actually do that. So make sure you find your spot for the next masterclass. It's going to be coming up here in just a couple of weeks. Make sure you get equipped with the knowledge that you need to change your health, change your life. All right, I think that's all for tonight. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your evening, and we'll talk soon.